talking about a little neighbor to this.
Ladies and gentlemen, honored guest. No, wrong speech, sorry. Hi, I'm Steve and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Steve.
Okay, hang on, wait a minute. Who's Steve? Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God in this.
Sunday, are King Slippy.
This is a Burns supper. And traditionally, Burns suppers, traditionally, it was always men. It was always men. A very formal affair. Lots of scotch, of course, to drink. No dancing, no music, just very, very serious. It was like going to a funeral. And in fact, the first time anybody gathered with, after Robbie Burns died, apparently 10,000 fans went to his funeral. 10,000. Most of them were husbands who were making sure that he really was dead. Who is Robbie Burns? For those, anybody new to a Burns supper or to Robbie Burns? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you know who Robbie Burns is. I went to a St. Andrew's night and some Scottish events in Winnipeg during the folk fest they have in Winnipeg. Went to the Scottish Pavilion, and my friend who grew up, is half Ukrainian, half German, growing up in Winnipeg. And he would see all these pictures of this guy up on the wall. And he said, who's this guy I'm seeing all around here? And I go, Scotland's national god. That's close. Robbie Burns has been described as Scotland's national poet, his national bard. If you wanted to put it in Canadian terms, you would have to take the ladies' man of Leonard Cohen, the storytelling of Gordon Lightfoot, the poetry and activist of Bruce Cockburn, Mel Hurtig, the nationalist, the Canadian nationalist, and probably a little bit of Paul Anka, the teen idol too, because that's Robbie Burns. Why would we celebrate Scotland's national bard here in Canada? Well, apart from the fact that the Scots created Canada. I know the English like to think they did it, and when you were growing up in the 70s at all, we were given this story about the two founding nations, the English and the French. I'm going, the English? What did the English have to do with anything? It was going, and I would say to my teachers, I said, what, the Scots? He goes, same thing. That was war. There are two or three great books out, but the best book I've ever read is called How the Scots, no, it's Great Scots, How the Scots Created Canada. The short version, at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham. Who won the battles of the Plains of Abraham?
MacDonald.
It was the Highlanders, because the battle was over in 20 minutes. The French put up brave words. He says, when General Wolfe demanded the surrender of the French forces at the Plains of Abraham, the French responded, Montcalm responded, the only answer I can give you is with the mouth of my cannon and the voice of my rifles. The battle was over in 20 minutes. And there's a French-Canadian historian who wrote The Battle for Canada. And he said, at the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, the French ran away and the Highlanders ran amok. It was over. It was over in 20 minutes. It was the Highlanders who made Canada what it is today. Apart from, when you took here this past summer, we celebrated the anniversary of David Thompson coming through Jasper. Now, David Thompson was working originally for the Hudson Bay Company and would work later for the Nor'westers. Both of them Scots. It was English businessmen that had started the Hudson Bay Company, but who ran the Hudson Bay Company? The Scots. Who started the Nor'westers? The Scots. It was the explorers. You look at the names on the maps, and it's the Scots. And wherever the Scots go, they take their language and their culture. And that's why we're celebrating Robbie Burns today, because you can bet those Scots that were coming here to Canada, whether it was the managers of the Hudson's Bay Company, or the explorers, or the people that started Canada, the Constitution of Canada, the British North America Act, the Fathers of Confederation, 8 out of 10 of the Fathers of Confederation were English, French, what? Scots. 8 out of 10 were Scots. They were people that couldn't stand each other. They hated each other. They were political enemies. But they got together and they hammered out an agreement that forged Canada. That's the way the Scots work. Canada has been called Scotland's revenge on England. Because they created a democratic, egalitarian society long before they had it. They still don't have that in the UK. They still don't have a democratic, egalitarian society. But Canada is a democratic, egalitarian society because that's what the Scots wanted. Public education was in Canada before it was in the UK because that's what the Scots believed in. So that's why we celebrate Scotland's national bard here. But for me, my introduction to Robbie Burns was partly because I am somebody who was born in Scotland of English parents. My mother was a Salvation Army officer in Scotland before she even met my dad. I was born, and she introduced me to the songs of Robbie Burns. Before I could speak English, I was listening to the songs of Robbie Burns. I've talked to people who were in the far north of communist China in the days of Chairman Mao, who said that he learned English by his grandma gave him a book of Robbie Burns poems. Robbie Burns. That's how he learned English. So he does better with the Scots than most of the English do. So, but for me, my introduction to Rabbie Burns, to Robert Burns, was through his songs and his poetry. Now, there's a lot here, but I would like to talk about 3. According to my notes, he published like more than 500 songs were published. 500. Now, not all of them were original. Sometimes there was an old Scottish tune that he thought was worth keeping around, so he would write new words to an old tune. Or he would hear a tune, somebody singing a tune, there'd be an old Scottish tune that his grand taught to him, or his mom used to sing to him, and he wrote it down and published it so that we have it today. Another one, as I said, he would write new tunes for old words and new words for old tunes. And that's how we end up with the songs we have today. Probably, for those of you who are new, the most famous song, well, one of the most famous is probably what's been called the best love song ever written. And it wasn't something by George Harrison. That's the other best love song. But the best love song ever written was probably, any guesses? My love is like a red, red rose. It's a cultural icon. It's everywhere. You may remember, those of us who are the baby boomer generation will remember Peter Brady when he was in love with his teacher at school, writes a love poem for his teacher at school, and he hands it to Alice, the maid. He says, and she reads, it says, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like a melody that's sweetly played in tune. And she goes, this is great, Peter. You think it's good? She says, I think it's a classic. These songs are everywhere. It's probably the best love song ever written. Now the tune that we know to it, it's like a lot of folk tunes. There'll be different tunes. The tune we know is maybe not the one he had in mind, but that's the great tune, and it's a classic.
Will you sing it for us?
Will I sing it for
Hum
us?
a few bars.
Hum a few bars? I'm not a tenor. You've got to be a tenor. The only one who was ever allowed to sing that one is Kenneth Keller. But what I will, I'll tell you what I will do. I've got a couple of notes here, playing to the camera, playing to the audience. Okay. The tune goes, the words go something like this. My love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. My love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. As fair art thou, my bonny lass, say deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and rocks up with the sun. Come on. And I will love thee still, my dear, while sands of life shall run. And fare thee weel, my only love, and fare thee weel a while. And I will come again, my love, though 'twere 10,000 miles. Isn't that so? Is there a better love song than that? It's a fantastic song. There's another song that has become the official song, the anthem of the Scottish Nationalists, of the Scottish Nationalist Party. Whenever they get together, they always conclude their meetings with Scots wa hey with Wallace Blake. Yeah, those of you who saw Braveheart, okay, or you tell me you didn't see Braveheart? 1, 2, 3, okay. Braveheart, the short version, William Wallace, a Highlander, Willie Wallace, who basically fought for Scottish independence and Scottish sovereignty, was executed for it, but one of Scotland's greatest national heroes. And he, if you go to Aberdeen, there's a great big statue of William Wallace there. But William Wallace, there's one in Aberdeen. So there was when I was there. Anyway, long story.
You're better.
But are we going to argue about this? Who's giving this talk? You come up here. Sam? Okay, so it's a for the longest time actually it was served as an unofficial national anthem for Scotland, and I'm wondering if I've got a semi-English translation here somewhere in this mess. I had my notes. Never trust anybody that doesn't have a prepared speech. Where is it? Scots wa hey. There it is. It's on the back side. Yay! He's got it. Thank you. That's it. Okay. This is the Scots, and basically it's a call to arms. It's in the time of Robbie Burns. It was kind of like in Canada now, where the people who had the money and the power that sold out their interest to the southern neighbours, and they would, you know how Canadian business are down saying we need to unify the economies, we need to unify the dollar, and this was a call to arms saying we're losing our sovereignty, we're losing our identity, we need to do something about this. And I was reading a story last night. They were saying if Robbie Burns had been alive in Scotland today, for the things he was writing and saying his time, he would probably be arrested under the anti-terrorism laws. Because basically it was a coded message for a call to arms. To say, what Scots wa hey with Wallace bled, so Scots wham Bruce has often led, welcome to your gory bed or to victory. Now's the day, and now's the hour. See at the front of battle lower, see approach Edward's power, chains and slavery. So he basically goes on to say anybody who's cooperating with his English at this point is a traitor and a knave and a coward. But in the last line, he's in the call to arms, he's saying, lay the proud usurpers low, tyrants fall in every blow, liberties in every blow, let us do or deed. That last line, let us do or deed, let us do or die, that was the battle cry of the Scots at Culloden when they were fighting against the English. And it was the tune that was used for this song is the tune that the Highlanders used as their marching tune when they fought at Culloden. It was also the tune that the Scots used when they were fighting in France. This was a call to arms. This was a call to insurrection. Now it's a nice song. So now it's a nice song. It's a lovely song. But I'm telling you, when the Scottish nationalists sing this at the convention, they're saying they're not thinking about a nice democratic vote to separate from England. The other song, they don't get it. They will. They'll get it. We'll have her. Yeah. They were taught. Robbie Burns was not calling for a referendum, by the way. The other one is probably the second most recognized tune in the world, after Happy Birthday, Auld Lang Syne. Okay? And last year I pointed out that how many people know the words to Auld Lang Syne? Hands up if you know all the words to Auld Lang Syne. How many people have sung Auld Lang Syne on New Year's Eve? Every single one of you. Yeah. And what is it? Should old acquaintance be forgot? And never run to mind. Oh, you've got the words this year. There was a survey done at New Year's this year in Scotland that said 37% of the people in the UK that's singing Auld Lang Syne on New Year's Eve are making up the words.
Absolutely.
37%.
I don't believe it.
It's 73% are making up some of the word, but 7% don't know any of it.
No.
In addition, for the under 25s, so for the millennials and the Generation Y, 25% of them think that either Elvis or Paul McCartney wrote the words. It's true. Whatever the words might be, they think that Elvis or Paul McCartney wrote it. This is the most recognizable song. It's the most recognizable tune. It's sung around the world on New Year's Eve. And here's the Canadian connection. It's true that the Scots, wherever they went in the diaspora, especially when they came to Canada, brought the songs of Robbie Burns with them. They would sing it at the Burns suppers, at the end of the Burns suppers. They would sing it on New Year's Eve at their homes. But it was a Canadian who made it world famous. Any guesses? Okay. And what was the name of his band? The Royal Canadians. And how did he make it world famous? Not just by doing the records of it, but he would play it live on New Year's Eve, right? And at Times Square. And that these today, to this very day, the first song they play at New Year's Eve in Times Square is Auld Lang Syne, and it's Guy Lombardo's recording. So the Canadian connection. What's it about? What's the song about? What does it mean? Sure, okay, you don't have to. You're basically for old time's sake. For old time's sake. Let's remember the good times. Let's remember, back in the day. It's about friendship, and it's saying you shouldn't give up your old friends. It's kind of like saying, make new friends but keep the old. One is silver, the other is gold. This is the things we did together is worth keeping friendship. That's the short version. Now, one last. The interesting thing about this, I spent 8.5 years in Taiwan, and while I was there, I was very active in the British Chamber of Commerce, and they had two big balls every year. One was the Britannia ball, formal ball, and everybody got in their formal wear. But an even bigger event was the St. Andrews. And it was interesting because people in the Taiwanese, they would rent out the kilts, they would get in the near, they would learn the Scottish country dancing, and at the end they would sing this tune. But everybody, 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody's way past drunk. They would all go anybody who could still stand would hold hands and sing Auld Lang Syne. But it was a strange thing for the Chinese and the Taiwanese, because for them this is a tune somehow that ended up being a funeral tune. If you go to a funeral in China, if you play this song in China or Taiwan, they think they're going to a funeral. It's not quite a funeral. The Burns Supper is not quite a memorial service, but it can be pretty close. But the song is one of the songs that we sing tonight. It's one of the songs where we remember old times, and that's why we sing it at New Year's Eve. One last note: why Robbie Burns? And I'll remember this, those who remember last year, when the people in Scotland for Scottish television voted on the greatest Scot of all time. It wasn't William Wallace. It wasn't Robert the Bruce. It wasn't Sir Alexander Fleming who invented penicillin. It wasn't the guy who invented television. It wasn't Alexander Graham Bell who invented the telephone in Canada. And believe it or not, it was not Sir John A. Macdonald. And it wasn't Sean Connery either. Robert Burns, the greatest Scot of all time. So tonight, when we do the Immortal, remember, it's a Scottish thing, it's celebrating Scottish, but it's also the Canadian connection. And I hope when you go home tonight and you talk to your friends, it's the Canadian connection. And it's about friendship. And that's what the Scots were all about. Forging families, forging relationships, building a country, building a nation where people could come from all over the world to create a democratic and egalitarian society where everybody had a chance. And that's what Robbie Burns was all about. Ladies and gentlemen, the Immortal.